Well, good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, and good morning to everyone else. And thank you for joining us here at the U.S. Department of Energy's ESPC campaign. I'm Chris Halpin with Energy Services Coalition. Uh, we've got a fantastic lineup today, talking about the ABCs of ESPC for K-12 schools, a practical introduction for school districts. And I know we've invited a lot of people to this, may not all be school districts, but a lot of things we're talking about here also apply to higher ed, community colleges, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be covering the fact that, no surprise to anyone here who's familiar with school districts, they continue to face major challenges, limited funding, especially since the pandemic. It's been even tougher for schools. A lot of aging buildings, growing deferred maintenance, and a lot of demands that are continually increasing around safety, security, comfort, as always, productive learning environments, right? Very, very big issue. And energy performance, which is, as rates continue to increase, it's making it even more challenging for schools to keep up. So ESPC can really help address many of these issues, not everything, right? That doesn't solve every problem, but really can be a big tool in the tool chest of everyone out there involved in schools. So we'll go through the state of schools in the U.S. right now, what ESPC is and how it can really help, how it can address a lot of the issues faced by schools today, as we just mentioned, and typical project scopes for schools, as well as some examples. Hopefully we'll have time to go through some of these case studies we have, and sort of what districts can do to prepare or consider getting started. So sort of a basic ABCs, literally. Here's how the challenges lay out, and here's what ESPC can do to address them. Next slide. So if you have any questions, put them into the Q&A box, and we'll try to answer them either during the session or at the very end. And if not, we'll definitely be able to get back to you when we send out a copy of all of the recordings and slide decks to everyone that's registered. As we said, this will be posted to the Energy Services Coalition past events webpage. Next slide. Intros. All right, so you have me. I'm Chris Halpin. If you've been watching any of these trainings or webinars, I've been helping Energy Services Coalition and DOE do this for about a year and a half. I've been in the energy business for 40 years, everything from working at ESCO's global energy manager and had my own firm managing these sorts of projects for 20-ish years. And we have a very esteemed guest here, Craig Schiller, Director of U.S. Green Building Council and the Center for Green Schools. Let him introduce himself. Next slide. Craig, please give us a little intro.
Hi, everyone. As
You're mute.
Chris said, I'm a director at the Center for Green Schools at the U.S. Green Building Council. Things I'll be working on this webinar is talking about HVAC, indoor air quality, replacements of school district facility upgrades that schools are challenged with for funding. I'll talk about the funding model, and I'll talk about the state of our national school infrastructure. Those are all things that we work on at the Center for Green Schools. So looking forward to giving you an overview of our school infrastructure system.
All right. Thanks, Craig. Next slide. So Energy Services Coalition, it's been around 20 plus years. We're a nonprofit composed of a network of experts from sort of state energy offices and agencies on the public side, and then folks that work with ESCOs and third-party owners, reps, and suppliers on industry side, all with the aim of fostering the use of performance contracting to address all these sorts of issues in the whole MUSH market, right? Primarily, state, local government, school districts, so on and so forth. And we really depend on our local chapters to really help get this message out there on a local basis, right? So it's a fabulous organization. I was on the board for many years, and now I've been a consultant with the SC for about 3 years. Next slide. So the ESPC campaign started about 2 years ago, actually this month, and we are very interested in adding more and more people to this campaign, right? DOE has put a lot of effort into trying to take what's been done for the federal marketplace through DOE and export a lot of that out into the MUSH market, right? So really trying to help state, local governments, schools higher ed, hospitals, and so on, learn about ESPC and how it can really help them and their daily lives. So you can join as a campaign leader if you're like a state energy office or similar organization that actually runs ESPC programs at a state. ESPC champions, if you're working for like Department of Corrections or an individual school or the city of wherever and want to do projects, you can join as a champion. And then supporters are basically all the private industry folks that really do a huge amount. The ESCOs, lighting controls, air conditioning vendors, and so on, owners reps, finance folks, attorneys, all that really support this infrastructure of this whole industry. Really ask you to join. There's huge benefits out of this. We'll go into at the end. So, Craig, the state of schools today. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we're going to have a lot of content on these slides. That is intentional. So when you do get the recording, which you will get, you can go through and read all these. I'll go through some highlights. I'll pick out some of my favorite, what I think are the most important facts. And I do want you all to ask questions. For me specifically, feel free to ask about the K-12 sector, about school districts, how they operate, the politics, the policies. Before I came to USGBC, I ran a school-specific technical building standard called CHIPS, Collaborative for High Performance Schools, which we subsequently merged into LEAD. So if you have technical questions, please answer. Please ask and they will be answered. So big picture, our K-12 sector nationally is huge. It's one of the largest infrastructure sectors that we have. For some big picture numbers, right? We have roughly 20,000 LEAs, what we call school districts across the country. That's 20,000 different governments of how schools should be ran. There's 56 million students and staff occupants. That's roughly 1 out of 6 people in this country a day are in schools. Maybe not this week with the weather, but on average, 1 out of 6 people in schools daily. That's a huge amount of infrastructure. The spend on that infrastructure is also tremendous. The K-12 sector spent $12 trillion on utilities a few years ago. They are the second largest consumer of electricity as a sector and the #1 consumer of natural gas, consuming up in the trillions of BTUs in the last few years. So again, largest consumer of natural gas, second largest of in electricity for all the sectors that we track these things for. Huge. We're going to go here in a little bit to talk about some of the needs that the school districts have, but I want to just really highlight here that this is a huge industry, that the 20,000 school districts create quite a problem because there are 20,000 different superintendents, there are 20,000 school boards that all have decision-making power, and most importantly, a theme that will come throughout all of this is school districts are funded locally. So you have 20,000 communities that have to vote on funding for schools. Okay, next slide. That means when we collectively as a nation have to increase our taxes to pay for schools and renovations and modernizations and operations and maintenance, it generally means we're failing. People don't like to do that. And that shows in the state of our schools and our infrastructure. A survey done by the Government Accountability Office a few years ago highlighted how many different school districts and how many schools need repairs done. One of the key takeaways from that was that 40% of districts need HVAC upgrades in half their schools or more. The same report concluded about 36% of all the schools in the country need HVAC replacements, upgrades, or modernizations, meaning 1 out of 3 schools is not getting proper thermal comfort and ventilation to the students that are in there for 15,000 hours over their career. I'm going to reiterate that. The majority of our school buildings need things fixed. #1 issue is HVAC. #2 is lighting. 3 is roofs. Safety is #4. It goes down the list. So we need a lot of things fixed in our school infrastructure. Next slide. To highlight some of that, I want to bring a couple of facts to you from the 2 reports you'll see on the left here. One is that our average school is about 50 years old. That means it was built in the 60s and 70s. That period of construction they were not designed to last 50 years old. Those were 30 to 40-year buildings. We've extended the life of many of those past their commercial lifespan. Now, there are many school buildings that are older than this, right? That's why the average is 50 years old. So just for perspective, our students are in some of our oldest infrastructure buildings in the country. That has led to a huge spending gap on how much we need to spend to modernize, replace, and operate our schools. In 2021, that number was 85 billion. It should say 2025, that number has gone to 90 billion. Annual deficit in school funding. That breakdown from 2025, which is this most recent report that came out, is about 34 billion in operation and maintenance and 56 in capital. So we do need a lot of replacement. We also need a lot of O&M. The number, actually, we were a little surprised that it didn't go up further from 85 billion to 90 billion, but part of that is because of the ESSER funds that came out during COVID, that school districts spend about $5.5 billion on HVAC upgrades, air filters in classroom filters, etc. So that number, the ESSER funds really helped mitigate the operation spending, but that was a one-time flux of money into the system. And most of those systems in 7 to 10 years are going to have to be replaced. There'll be a mass replacing movement that we are not prepared to spend for. Next slide. What are the outcomes? What does that mean for students when you're this old and have this much need in operation? That is incredibly hard to calculate. That is nearly impossible to draw one-for-one conclusions with the state of this building, the state of this school equals these health effects from students. So we look at national averages and we look across multiple school districts with thousands of students. One takeaway is that 1 out of 10 students have asthma. Asthma is directly an indicator of indoor air quality, either at home or in their building. Since students spend the majority of their time in schools, second after home, it's a huge issue. We need our school buildings to have the best indoor air quality, since that's where kids should be guaranteed to have the best air quality. But that number is really, really problematic. Next slide. Another actually traceable and quantifiable number is the lost learning events. So school days that are canceled because of utility blackouts or extreme weather. So a nonprofit partner of ours, Undaunted K12, has been tracking these closures across the country. And if you look at this map, you'll see a few things. The Southeast has been hammered by severe weather. I mean, even right now, there are lost learning events because of the severe weather across the Southeast and most of the United States. You also see in the Northeast, you'll see a lot of extreme heat conditions that cancel school. That's because the Northeast rarely has air conditioning. Most of the schools in the Northeast were built at a time when air conditioning was not considered and not needed. Just for why this matters, I mean, Ohio a couple of years ago, all of the teachers went on strike just to get HVAC and AC in their schools. So this is a real effect, not just on the students, but also on the teachers that we need to hire and recruit to teach our students. Next slide. Okay, why am I showing a car? Well, I'm going to pause for a second and see if anybody can guess what kind of car this is. Next slide. Oop, back one. Yeah, this is the 1975 Oldsmobile Cutlass. This was one of the most popular and most sold cars in 1975. If our school infrastructure, our 50-year-old school infrastructure was a car, this would represent our school buildings nationally. Just want to highlight, as far as we've come over the last 50 years, this is the average school building in our country. Next slide. That compares it to the number one selling vehicle from last year. This is the technology change that we've had. It's can be really hard to think of a building and how delayed the technology and design is, how behind the times it is. But if we look at other things like cars or computers over the last 50 years and how much has changed, it becomes really evident. So I just want to highlight this. Next slide. Highlight this change. So one of the things that I'll ask school districts when I show them. Oh, back one, please. One of the things that I talk about with school districts is, how do we quantify? If you're a professional driver and you had to choose between this Tesla or the Oldsmobile Cutlass, which car would you want to drive in if you're a professional driver? That is a parallel question to what school teachers are being asked. School teachers are in demand. It is a hiring market. If school teachers have an option between a new school and an old school, they're going to pick the new school. They hear that from teachers all the time. Which of these cars is safer? Which is more efficient? Right? These are all questions that are parallel to the school building. So next slide. This is one of the most important studies that has come out in the last 20 years around school infrastructure. This is a study that looked at over 5,000 students in the UK, and they essentially looked at all of the factors affecting learning from students that learn in the worst classroom, what they call the worst classroom, they have measurable metrics to define that, and then the best classroom. And through all of that, because there's over 5,000 students, they were able to extrapolate out social economic, teacher quality, nutrition, sleep, etc. And they found that 16% of the students' progress of learning, 16% was directly due to the quality of the classroom. Meaning if you took a student from the worst classroom and put them in the best classroom, they would learn 16% more and faster. This is why modernizing schools matters. Next slide. Okay, this will be the last one I have, and please, if you have more questions or anything, this or comments, I'm going to go into the Q&A very shortly. But again, I want to switch to why, the problem is clear. The problem is clear, why it matters is clear. Now, like, what can we do about it? As I mentioned, the majority of communities do not want to pay for operations and maintenance or new construction. Every school district knows that, every community knows that, every school board, every PTA meeting. This is the biggest challenge our schools have, is engaging the community to fund their schools. 70% of schools are funded locally. That's the problem in our system. But performance contracting can help because it is a non-capital way to improve your school. And it has taken off in the last couple decades. Right now, between $6 and $8 billion of performance contracting is invested in our K-12 school, and that number is growing. So what Chris is going to talk about is how these O&M things that are needed, like electrical, roofing, HVAC replacements, can be part of a comprehensive performance contract. With that, Chris, I'll end it here and pass it to you.
All right. Thanks, Craig. It was great. I love the images and the analogies between the cars. I'm at the right vintage of age that I had. I had a 73 Chevy Chevelle. I had a 73 Vega, had a Camaro back then. And boy, am I happy. I drive a Tesla Model Y myself now. And what a difference. I feel like a closest thing to piloting a spacecraft. And it's completely analogous to schools. Anyway, so what is performance contracting, right? So this has been going on for 50 years, right? In Ohio, you mentioned Ohio. So Ohio and Washington State is where most of this started, right? In the early 80s. Department of Energy got involved in this in the mid 90s after EPAC 92 was passed. Federal programs started in the late 90s when I was involved with them. And it's really a fantastic, like I mentioned, tool for any public agency out there, federal, state, or local government, any education association at all. And the way I look at it, it's really a financial mechanism used to pay for today's facility upgrades, all these things that Craig was talking about with tomorrow's energy savings, right? So you're not having to go out and like do a referendum, right? The death knell of most improvements, they have to go out to referendum, and a lot of people are like, oh, we just can't pass that in our district. No, we don't have the money, and the kids continue to suffer in schools, right? So ESPC allows you to do this. You're monetizing, collateralizing those future savings, so you don't have to tap into your organization's capital budget. That's one of the beauties of this to me. And done properly, it has the performance of a hedge fund with the risk of a T-bill. That's an old, also Department of Energy EPA tagline from Energy Star from many years ago, but it fits ESPC so well, right? Done properly, a lot of the best practices we've been teaching through this campaign, utilized in a real project, will help you do this in a way that gets great results for you and your schools, your students, your faculty, your staff, and the community, and also helps the ESCOs provide that to your community and helps them make, a fair profit and great references, and they can go on and continue to do that with other schools. So it's really comes down to being highly focused design build contracting with a focus on guaranteed energy savings that you don't get in any other part of this business, right? So you build a new school, you renovate a school, there's no guarantees whatsoever from your architects, your builders, commission agents, nobody, right? You do this through performance contracting, you get guarantees on the performance and on the pricing. No change orders unless you dictate them. So with ESPC, this is sort of a graphic deal he's been using for years. You have your existing energy and operations budget, right? Before you start this project, you're spending however many, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars per year. During the project, the ESCO identifies through an investment grade audit, identifies all the different things, stuff that, Craig was talking about, lighting, controls, HVAC. These days, a lot of building automation upgrades, solar, battery storage where it makes sense. Um, and the ESCO and you together figure out how much this is going to cost, how much it's going to save, and you basically put this into a sort of a 15, 20-year timeline for paying this back through a lease purchase financing. And then once that it's almost like a mortgage on your house or a car payment on a car, you're taking that and paying for it over time. When you're finished making those payments, you get all of those savings, right? So that's sort of how it works from a budgeting point of view. So it's budget cost neutral, which is again, it's a huge tool for school districts because you don't have to ask for more tax money. It's money you're giving to your local electric utility, gas utility, water. Your contractor are taking care of, 50-year-old air conditioning and heating in some cases, but the average school building is that old, so it's very powerful in that respect. Next slide. So this has been going on, like I mentioned a minute ago, in the 70s and 80s. It's been helpful to school districts, especially because your risk-averse, budget-neutral financial mechanism really helps you overcome these barriers, right? And again, you're running a school district, or you're teaching a school district, you want to focus on your mission, right? You don't want to take a chance of disrupting your classroom by doing things to reduce learning time. So performance contractors, energy services companies do this, have perfected this over the years of working after hours, overnight, on weekends. So they're not interfering with the school's mission, right? So it really helps you avoid a lot of the things that you're used to suffering, right? This conservative fiscal cultures where you just can't get that extra money. The fact that school teachers have to go and buy supplies themselves, it just illustrates the need for this sort of thing. So, yes, thanks. So the benefits to the mush market, especially schools, right? It applies to everywhere, but schools really see the benefit of this. It's budget friendly, like I mentioned. It's guaranteed results, right? The ESCO is taking the risk that those savings are going to occur. And through properly written contracts, again, that's something we have previous webinars go over exactly this thing. It's one of the only places where schools have recourse with the design and construction community. They usually have none, right? It's so hard to fix a school that gets built badly. And school districts typically don't have the money or the time to go and try to sue architects, engineers, and contractors. It creates a lot of jobs, right? I moved from New England to Las Vegas 7 years ago, and I saw what happened during both the pandemic and prior to that, in the economic meltdown that we had. And this ESPC tool created hundreds of thousands of jobs around the country during that time. It creates a lot of resilience and leadership around community resilience, a lot of operational efficiency, and really improves the environment. I've seen this in schools all over the country. I've been doing this, again, in schools for 40 years. And the difference that it made for children to be able to focus on their work instead of wondering why they can hear things through the windows from outside, the windows are rattling, the air conditioning comes on and you can't hear anything, it goes off and you can't hear anything. It's really makes a huge difference. Next slide. So it's also been resilient, regardless of the economy, the federal, state, or local government administrations, financial downturns, upturns, doesn't matter. Performance contracting has been able to withstand everything, right? It also has bipartisan appeal, right? So this is privately financed, doesn't require taxpayer dollars. So for conservative people, this is a fantastic thing to do. You're using private money, private contractors for the public good, right? So everybody in a community, regardless of the politics, can feel good about this. You'll see we have a case study later on in a very rural district in the Southeast where they voted for this administration twice in a row, very conservative area, and they did a fantastic job of implementing performance contracts in their schools. So I've seen this work everywhere you can imagine. And one of the things that really sets it apart is rigorous measurement verification, right? This is something that really is a differentiator. When you do a regular taxpayer funded modernization of a school, no one measures or verifies any results. Did the indoor air quality get better? It doesn't get measured, right? Or did the energy bills lower? It doesn't get measured. Through performance contracting, it does. And this has been done like I said, countless times, over $30 billion, which is probably a conservative number, have been done through this. Next slide. So who are the players in a performance contract? There is you, right? The school districts are in the middle of these deals. This is your project, right? It's not the ESCO's project. It's not any outside entity's project. It is your project, right? That's the number one thing to remember here. The way this is structured allows you to work very collaboratively with the ESCO, like you don't get with the normal, architect, engineer, design, bid, build structure, which becomes sort of adversarial. This is not. You're hiring that one company that does all of this work for you. And because they don't have to put pricing out as soon as they get there, they're allowed to sit there with you, co-author the solutions, co-author the pricing with you. So the way we run these, it's completely open and transparent. And the ESCO becomes your partner, right? We like people to also hire owners reps. Like I used to do this for many, many years, 20 plus years. And they are the ones that help you figure out all the details. The ESCO is providing you very detailed investment grade audits. It's very tough to read. Not enough time in a day for most of these facilities folks at schools to really manage this. So your owners will provide you with expert guidance for quality assurance. There's all the reviews for you throughout the process, right? And then you hire an outside financier. Most school districts have their FA, right, the financial advisors that can help them put out an RFP to bring in the bank of wherever you are, or national banks participate a lot in this. And they provide you with this construction financing and debt financing over this 15 to 25-year term. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you pay these debts back over time. Next slide. So how can this address the issues faced by schools today? Next slide. So Craig and I have laid this out already, right? There's lack of available capital for critical education mission, right? And this is all about the mission, as I alluded to earlier. Energy savings is nice, right? Improving the indoor air quality is great, but it all has to lead to improving the mission, right? The children have to be able to learn and keep those behinds in the seats absolutely as much as possible every hour of the day that is allotted for learning, right? So it allows you to reallocate money. Like I said, it's like energy equity waste that's going on in these schools. You can take that money and redirect it into local reinvestment in your schools and in those children's futures, right? It's a real untapped funding source. Because it includes guaranteed energy savings and measurement verification, it really addresses the issue of being risk averse, right? You may not want to do this because you're not sure how it's going to come out. And again, with the owner's rep help, they can make sure that these contracts are watertight to make sure you get the project you wanted, right? Again, you won't get everything. It's not painting wallpaper and a new classroom furniture, but it really helps with windows, doors, air conditioning, lighting, heating, so on and so forth. Speaking of that, right, you got to retrofit all of the energy systems or most of the energy systems, sometimes all, and address deferred maintenance, right? There's trillions of dollars in deferred maintenance in schools in this country today. And it really helps you get resources highly focused to help you address these issues. Instead of saying like an engineering firm comes in and does a conditions assessment, there's no outcome basis to that, right? In this case, the ESCOs do a very highly focused ASHRAE level 2 or level 3 comprehensive energy audit leading to turnkey installation, right? So it's all outcome based. And then lastly, but not least, sustainability and resilience goals, right? This helps you promote and implement energy efficiency. Solar these days, right? It's become just like another energy conservation measure. It used to be incredibly expensive, and now it's basically cheaper than replacing chillers and boilers. And these days, if you live in one of these schools in anywhere hurricanes hit or ice storms or these winter storms that are hitting the East Coast this week, battery storage is your friend, right? That can help you keep that school up and running. And if it's a designated place of refuge, you don't always get to have those diesel generators work, right? If you can't get diesel, like we saw after Superstorm Sandy, right, and 15 years ago, you're really out of luck. And battery storage doesn't have that problem. And then lastly, EV fleet conversion is another great opportunity through this. Next slide. So Speaking of resilience, this is one of my favorite things about performance contracting. We helped create the first federal um, microgrid in the country about 15 years ago, and it was amazing to see what that did. You kept experiments running that had been running for a year, and normally they would have been shut down. And I saw the same thing in schools in the districts that I worked in over the years, making those schools improve and maximize learning time, right? All about the mission, number one, by improving the infrastructure and these equipment upgrades, it allows you to keep that school as a community resource that you just don't often see in many places. Um, so giving the facility resilience is great. You can also provide grid resilience. If you can do a lot of your schools like this, you're reducing a lot of the stress on the grid, right? And depending on what location you're in, the grid is very stressed. And with all these AI data centers and crypto mines and all this that are coming out onto the grid, this grid that is already in trouble is going to be even more stressed. Organizational resilience can really help you improve economics and well-being. Sometimes I've seen projects that have been able to provide other intangible benefits to the schools, right? Add STEM curricula where there had been none before, and so on. Scholarships for students to go to engineering school, and so on. And community resilience, we talked about. Next slide. So why does this work for K-12? One of the secrets of this is the power of bundling. I've seen some schools in the past just go and replace all their lighting, right? They just bring in a contractor, gives them a price. All right, during the summer break, construction season, right? Replace all the LED lights, right? If some of them don't work, you're out of luck. If it lowers your electric bill, great, but there's no guarantees. By bundling things like that or upgrading controls, right? Going to replacing obsolete controls with new open protocol controls, doing all of this through a performance contract allows you to take those low payback measures and bundle them with the high payback measures, right? The boiler replacements, chiller replacements, window replacements, putting in solar and battery storage, blending it all together into one package so that it's all done at the same time. Number one, you don't have to worry about future proof and back proofing software that may not work together. I've seen a lot of that as well. So doing all of these things together in one fell swoop gets a lot of benefits to your school district. Right. Again, we don't have time to go into all of this, but you'll get all these slides at the end. Next slide. So typical scopes. So for example, Hawaii, as many of you know, it's the most expensive power in the country. Everything has to be imported, right? All the fuel, virtually all the food, all the supplies, construction materials, you name it, gets shipped right from the mainland or from Asia or wherever. So anytime any entity in Hawaii wants to build anything, change anything, it's extremely expensive, right? And as we saw with the fire in Lahaina and all these other things that have gone on, climate change is really impacting all the islands around the world, but Hawaii is one of the victims, and it's a shame. But one of the things that Department of Education and the energy office there have been doing as part of the SCAHE program is implementing performance contracting, right? Done a lot of things over the past 10 or 15 years, but last year they started a new round of this. A multitude of issues came up, so they stopped it, and they recently reached out to us and said, hey, can you at the ESPC campaign help us with this? So we just got started on this. We're doing a few things. We're helping them revise their invitation to proposals. They have 3 pre-qualified ESCOs, right? So we're teaching this, and these are all things we taught during these trainings with other districts and other mush market participants over the past year and a half. But pick a partner on a project, right? Don't send out an RFP and have ESCOs go and walk all your schools and come back with a proposal that has costs and savings in 30, 60 days, right? There's no way they can do what they need to do to give you realistic numbers. There's no way to do the collaboration that I talked about earlier. So what we're doing as part of this, and I've done this with multiple school districts and universities in the past, eliminating audit as part of your submission, right? They're already pre-qualified. Have them just provide you updated qualifications and indicative pricing so that you have an idea, regardless of what the total price is going to be, what's going to be their percentage for engineering, M&V, training, so on and so forth, right? So it really reduces the burden on an ESCO. Again, when I worked for an ESCO in the 90s, we would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes replying to RFPs like this. And then it takes months with the Department of Ed, even without outside help, to get these things reviewed. So that this is going to speed up the process without sacrificing quality. Then they pick the partner, then they do the investment grade audit, and then you get a real collaborative process, right? We're going to provide a template for transparent open book pricing, all, uh, basically pioneered at Department of Energy, including the risk responsibility matrix is a DOE tool, the comment response resolution spreadsheet, which tracks the process over time. We're providing a technical facility profile so that the ESCOs could get an idea of here are the things that are at the school. So when you are selected, here are the sort of things you're going to see. We give them a list of objectives and some chronic O&M issues so they can see what the challenges are like, and include a sample IGA agreement, investment grade audit agreement, and the energy services agreement so that you have this ESCO selected and it, you don't want to waste time after that trying to negotiate agreements. I've been involved in these where this hadn't been done at the beginning, and 6 months later, they couldn't come to agreement. They had to go back to a second ESCO, right? So you don't want to have this. We're also going to help them put out an RFP and hire an owner's rep. That's really a best practice for every state should be doing this. And educating all other stakeholders, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and really ensure energy, water efficiency, healthy environments, and resilience are addressed. Next slide. So here's the school district in rural North Carolina. I mentioned earlier, they've done a fantastic job here. They really addressed like some really old schools, right? North Carolina, in fact, has the oldest school building in the country at UNC Chapel Hill from 1795. Most people don't know that, right? So there's a lot of old building stock there, a lot of new building stock because it's a state that's grown a lot, but a lot of old building stock. And they were able to address HVAC, lighting, controls, water, insulate your water piping. Again, just a deferred maintenance issue that most places have. And it really streamlined their internal processes, right? So this is JSI was the ESCO, and a local firm was the owner's rep. And you can click on these links when you get it to see more about the project. Next slide. So that's sort of like rural, right? Out in the Piedmont of North Carolina. Here's Telluride in the southwestern corner of Colorado that's up at like 8,000 feet. Like many mountain towns in the US, they're remote from everything, right? So anything that gets done there, it's expensive, it's hard to get to in the winter, right? All this kind of stuff. So they really need to be as resilient as possible. So Telluride did a great job working with the ESG and other ESCO here, doing a lot of these things. LED lighting, upgraded snow melt controls for enhanced energy efficiency. Talk about making the environment better, right? This is something that's sort of an outlier compared to what you might see at other places, but it's a really interesting thing that got done there. And solar panels to help do on-site renewable energy at the site, EV charging stations for visitor and staff, and collaborated with local historical societies, right? This is really important, and especially in some of these older school districts. So it's really a super case study. Again, you can learn more about this when you get the slides. Next slide. Then here's one in Delaware. The state of Delaware has done an amazing job with performance contracting. It's a tiny state with not a huge amount of infrastructure, but the state Energized Delaware program has done a fantastic job with this. This is one project where they put in a solar system at 1.4 megawatts of solar, right? That's a lot of solar in schools, and it really helped them reduce their costs, right? It also allowed them to monitor this and take that and put it into the curriculum, right? They're able to basically show students, teachers, staff, this is how much the solar energy is saving you today, right? And it's a great thing for these students to learn about. And Cyrillic Train was the contractor in this one. Then here, where I live in Las Vegas, Clark County School District, this is their second round. They did performance contract back 10 years ago on 50 of their 400 schools. This one, they focused on lighting and lighting controls to do something that had a real visual effect. It's been a great project. in the fifth largest district in the country. Over 200 schools were addressed, and that's just about half of the schools. And did one of the best jobs I've seen of adding controls that won't be obsolete in the next few years, which happens in a lot of places, and did a lot of things like daylight harvesting that help make those environments optimal for students in these buildings, reduced wastes, all these kinds of great things. We don't have time to get into it now, but this district has done a wonderful job. Will Dan was the ESCO, NB5 was the owner's rep, and we're hoping they're going to continue to do more. Next slide. So how do you get started? Next slide. So one of the first things to do is sit down with your internal stakeholders, hopefully get an owner's rep to help you think this through at the very beginning, and you can brainstorm, right? A lot of things are obvious, right? We have lighting that's out. We have these old ones that are flickering, that, the acrylic screens are brown or orange. Those are easy signs, right? And I don't have time to get into all of this, but there's a lot of things that you can address with performance contracting that are both energy goals, right? Make things work better, save money, improve the environment. Also non-energy goals, right? Carbon reduction, resilience, compliance. One of the best things I've seen out of this in the 40 years I've been doing this is helping the operations and maintenance staff who are overlooked everywhere you go, especially in new schools. They get built. The architects and builders rarely give the men and women in the blue overalls, gray overalls, any sort of training on those buildings. Are left with the keys and the 6-inch binders. Good luck, right? With performance contracting, they get thorough training that is all taped. So everybody that comes to work for that district can then learn about the project. Next slide. And we have a whole presentation. One of our previous events is just about this, right? Working with your stakeholders. One of the keys to success is do design build, not build design, right? Don't rush into one of these projects. Make sure you get yourself some assistance. Like I said, there's owners reps out there, there's financial advisors, there's law firms that can help you kind of get started on this. Get a project champion. Make sure anybody with veto power in your organization is on board with one of these projects before you get started. Don't spend 9 months, like I've seen, 9 months going through the whole investment grade audit. Then it gets to the attorney and they go, nope, can't do this. Or the CFO, oh, sorry, debt capacity isn't there. We can't do this, right? Get all these folks on board, including O&M folks, right? Don't forget them. And then get your project started. Next slide. So this has been drinking from a fire hose, and I know that. Right? So there's a lot of information. We understand. So hopefully you get a chance to watch this again. Also, please contact us. You have any questions about any of this that's more than just a single question. You really want to get into some detail. Click on this link, send DOE an email. It'll get to us. We'll be able to set up a time and talk to you about anything you want to do. With your schools, or if you're non-school, that's fine. We do this for state agencies, corrections, cities, towns, hospitals, whatever it is, anything in the mush market. Like I mentioned, we're working with Hawaii Department of Education right now. We're trying to help them really take what was a good program, make it a great program, and then extrapolate it out to all of the islands. So please, again, any follow-up, we're more than happy to help. Next slide. All right. Do Q&A now, or should we do resources? We have 15 minutes. Do we have any questions? Let's see. Okay, I see somebody saying, okay. Recording, will the recording be available? Yes, the recording will be available. Anyone that's registered will get an email linking you to the slide deck and a recording. And first step in energy efficiency is always measurement and benchmarking. Yes, that makes sense. You want to make sure you know how much you're spending and where before you get into a project like this. That's right. The first part of measurement verification is baselining, right? You baseline not only your energy costs and the usage, but you baseline how you're operating and maintaining your buildings. Because without those two, you're not going to be able to calculate and measure the savings that you have. Okay. Why is this such an untapped resource? Great question from Erica Brown. And what are the downsides? So one of the reasons that this has only been done in a fraction of the schools in this country, even though the largest consumer of ESCO services and performance contracting in the country is the K through 12 market. But as Craig showed you at the very beginning, this is basically either the largest or one of the largest infrastructure markets we have in this country, right? Schools have more square footage than just about any other single sector in the country. And because there was, one bad project, the whole state will stop doing this. I've been to 3 or 4 states where this has happened, right? And a lot of times it's because there was no outside oversight and the owners didn't understand what they were buying, and the folks that worked for them did not get trained properly. And sometimes they did get trained and there was turnover because there was no videos of the training, and then things just fell apart, right? And the ESCO weren't really was responsible. And sometimes there's things that the ESCOs didn't do right that can be resolved. Sometimes the things that school district folks didn't do right, that can be resolved. That's why having really well-written contracts is the key to all of this, right? And that's one of our past events that we had goes over that.
Wait, Chris, can I
Yeah,
add to that
sure.
for
Yes.
Erica? Uh, Erica, that's a great question. Do you mind putting in the chat, like, are you at a district or what your role is? I ask that because for those of you who are not at districts, districts rely a lot on their neighbors. As
Mhm.
Chris said, a bad project can really influence not just the neighboring districts, but the whole state's approach to performance contracting. And that has been done. There were some bad projects early on that really gave a negative reputation to performance contracting in the industry. So if you're an ESCO on this line for school districts, it is a requirement and obligation to make sure that you go above and beyond, because that the performance of your project will scale. The other reason, Erica, this is not or this is an untapped resource, is unfortunately, performance contracting is really for mid and large size districts. And the contract process and the setup process that ESCOs go through to get new projects is a lot. The cost of new projects is a lot. The cost of really small school districts, the earnings from small school districts are not a lot. So there is a size delta, roughly about 500,000 square feet for a project or a series of projects. So small school districts, rural school districts that are one or two buildings generally are entirely ignored by the performance contracting industry simply because the cost of contracting and getting the project done is too high. All right, Chris.
All right. Thanks. It's a great answer, Craig. And it is, it tends to be larger, medium and larger school districts that do these typically because they had the internal wherewithal to do it. That's why, again, I mentioned owners reps earlier. And again, when I was doing this for Nesco in the 90s, man, I wish there were owners reps out there, because as an ESCO, we ended up having projects never get approved, never mind built, just because the owners were very risk averse. They didn't understand it very well. They didn't have any help. Sort of like commissioning agents, right? No new building would ever be built today, especially in schools, without a commissioning agent, right? In the early 90s, that wasn't there, right? We've the same way with owners reps in this. They're sort of, 15 years behind where commissioning agents were, but it's starting to be a best practice. Like the Department of Energy requires for every federal project, you have to have this outside assistance. And that's what can be done with small districts. I mean, back when I was doing this full time, we helped a school district that had 5 schools in the whole district in rural counties all over the country, right? So it's doable. Um, and here from Ken Cottrell, are schools and universities eligible to enroll in demand response programs? Yes, they sure are. Demand response is becoming more and more important as the grid becomes more stressed. Usually most grids, depends on where they're located, have a period of 10 to 20 hours in the year that if that could be managed more wisely, we wouldn't have as many outages on the grid. And demand response, which is a very complicated topic,
Yeah.
but it basically allows you to reduce your energy load, your energy draw for half hour, few hours at a time. And that's where battery storage and solar are huge
Yeah. But,
helpers and
but
updated
Kenneth,
controls. Craig,
that
yeah.
is often up to the utility. And for big consumers like universities, utilities often have incentives for you to implement demand response because it
Yep.
also affects them positively. So your first step, if you're interested in that, is reaching out to your utility.
It is. So you can do this. This is again what I used to do full time. You have the ESCO reach out to the utility, and as you and the ESCO are putting your project together, see if what you're going to do, like if you're going to get updated HVAC controls, right, and lighting controls as part of your project, as most of these include that, they're the two secret weapons you have to be able to do demand response, right? And there's payments you get for having to enable your system to do it, and payments you get per event, right? We don't have time to go into all this. We'll probably do a webinar on this sometime in the future. Okay. Software you would recommend. There's no like set software for a performance contract. There's a lot of different softwares that are used. The one I can recommend, we're going to get into here in a minute. Yeah, we have to uh, continue on here, but eProject Express is a software that DOE created through Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Actually, can you advance the slides to the resources? So we have these upcoming events. We're going to be doing a similar event to this. Instead of about schools, it's how states are maximizing agency participation with their agency, sort of like a state energy office or Department of General Services for a state, and how they're working together with those state agencies to really maximize participation for this sort of stuff. eProject Express, that DOE, again, run by LBNL, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, put together this software that allows you and your ESCO to upload every piece of documentation for your project up into this cloud-based, password-protected, encrypted database that's completely safe, and you don't have to depend on whether your employees who may leave and you can't get the information off their laptop, or the ESCO project developer leaves, or whatever. You can put all your information into this
Yeah.
database, and it's a fantastic tool, absolutely
And
fantastic tool.
but
Go ahead.
Huma, every ESCO is going to want to use the proprietary software. A problem that we see a lot is school
Yep.
districts saying that we can't integrate our controls because one group of the controls is proprietary to Johnson Controls or Train or another big
Right.
ESCO. So I ditto what Chris said. Use a public and a free service like that. Make sure your ESCO is okay with that because you don't want to be stuck in a proprietary situation.
Yep. The keywords are open protocol
Yeah.
and backnet native, right? I
Yeah.
don't have time to get into engineering stuff right now, but again, feel free to reach out. Anything along those lines, I can help you with anything technically, contractually, financially with this. So there's the two EPX webinars coming up February and March, and then Craig, you have the Green Schools Conference in San Diego. Does anything you want to
hmm
say about that?
Uh, no, it's a great event if you're in the school, the K12 space or want to get into the K12 space as an ESCO. It is a conference that covers the breadth of climate curriculum integration to HVAC upgrades in schools. So we're all about sustainability and improving the built environment. If that interests you, please attend.
All right,
San
great.
Diego in February.
Horrible. Yeah, ASHRAE and AHR are here in Las Vegas next week. Next slide. So some of our relevant past campaign events. I've mentioned a few of these here. For anyone that's interested in really learning more about this, definitely go through our first training. Here's ESPC, sort of the 101. This workshop, working with internal, external stakeholders, super, super important. And maximizing your success, review and apply lessons learned, and then jump starting in ESPC. This is another one we did about a year ago. We did one just in October, Ally in Your Corner, working with owners reps, which I think, again, is super important, having been on the other side of that business. Wish they were there back then. And then we have a whole webinar just on resources. Where can you find these resources all over the web for ESPC? Next slide. And then about the campaign itself, right? So the DOE has put a lot of effort into this campaign, right? It's trying to support the use of performance contracting to do all these things we've been talking about for schools. We're trying to share and leverage practical resources to strengthen ESPC and use measurement and verification, right? You don't want to go with like stipulated savings. The Efficiency Evaluation Organization has put out this international performance and measurement verification protocol. It's sort of like the gospel of measurement verification in this business. Um, and that's what allows these projects to be bankable, right? That's why they're investment grade audits because of the measurement verification. And we try to help amplify and implement these best practices. You've heard me refer to a few of them on this webinar. We have dozens and dozens of these best practices to share with everybody. We want to try to demonstrate the impact and showcase achievements. We're hoping to get to the point of showing $1 billion worth of measured and verified savings. We're also looking for case studies, so please, click on this link down here to submit any case studies that you have. And please, you want to join, it requires hardly any work on your part. Just click on this expression of interest form, and we'd love to have more partners in this campaign. Next slide.
Chris, we got a couple more questions.
Yep, I see more questions. I want to see if there's anything at the end. I think that might be it. Is there anything else after this? Yeah, that's it. So let's go back here. I talked about software, financial viability. Are you finding financial viability of ESPCs to be limited due to fewer and fewer LED lighting measures remaining in K through 12 schools? Yes, that is becoming an issue where it used to be a TA to LED retrofit was a 3 to 5 year simple payback. Now that's sort of becoming harder and harder to find, right? And depending on the more sophisticated the light fixture you want installed, whether it's retrofit or new, they can be expensive. Again, making the payback a bit higher, right? But because lighting is one of the single most important things in classrooms, it's regardless of cost, it's one of the things that almost always is included in one of these projects, right?
Yeah.
As well as controls. Go ahead, Craig.
Oh, no, and in addition to that, I mean, most of the big school districts in the country, because lighting was such an easy payback, most of the big school districts in the country were being sold heavily by all the ESCOs. So the Chicago Public School Districts, the Clark counties, we've heard they're just like overwhelmed by the amount of ESCOs coming to them trying to do lighting projects. Most of those school districts now, projects are done. LEDs put in. We have to go to smaller and medium schools to do that now.
Yep. But there's still a lot of opportunity. And there's other things now that like building envelope upgrades where you can do commercial grade blower door tests that weren't available 10 years ago. That's a 3 to 4 year payback in many areas, right? Especially with the increasing cost of energy. The electric costs here in Clark County schools increased by 30% since 2002. It's incredible. And then we have another question. Do you think, this is from Dalvin Estrada, do you think that the fact that some ESCOs will charge for the ASHRAE energy audit if they don't go forth with a project? So a best practice, right, is that as part of your initial proposal, the school district should ask, how much are you going to charge me to do an energy audit, to do this comprehensive audit? In your RFP should be descriptions of exactly what's required of that audit, right? It's usually in a cents per square foot. So you sign an investment grade audit agreement. The ESCO goes through and does the audit. If it meets the requirements, financial hurdles and all that you put in place, and it's financeable, that cost usually gets rolled into the construction cost on the ultimate financing. If they've done what they promised and you decide not to move forward for whatever reason, then yes, you have to pay the ESCO that fee. But ESCOs are not in the business of doing energy audits, right? They're contractors. The energy audit is a tool that they use to identify the solutions to cost them to figure out how to get commissioned, how to do the training, all of that. That's what the IGA is. It's just a tool. They're not in there to do energy audits because an energy audit doesn't save you any money or improve your learning environment. It just documents things. It has to lead to an implementable outcome. And then how much time? Okay, we have 1 minute left. KDPL, how often and where are you seeing use of ESPCs in the public charter? So that charter schools, I would assume.
Yeah,
you answer, I have not seen it used in charter schools. It probably is, but I haven't seen it yet myself personally.
Yeah, Katie, charter schools are really challenging because as I mentioned, you need a certain minimum size for performance contracting to be successful. So you would have to lump multiple charter schools together under one contract. And as you can imagine, with each charter school's leadership being different, that can be really challenging. Plus, you would have a contract, fiasco trying to manage all those different entities into one contract. So not often, unfortunately.
Yep. And most charter schools are 10 years old or less, right? So there isn't really that old school, like we're talking about. It's more like a Tesla than a Cutlass,
Yeah.
right? For most charter schools, at least the ones that I were familiar with, Goddard schools and all these other ones um, that are like that. So we've run out of time. Again, any other questions? Here is my contact info. Craig's was at the beginning of the presentation as well. You'll be getting an email within a week or so with a link. And we appreciate all of you joining and best of luck moving forward. Take care, everybody. Thank you.